Hello everyone, I'm Alex Dykes, and in today's video we will be talking about the 2015 and 2016 Mercedes-Benz GLA crossover. The GLA is Mercedes' least expensive crossover vehicle in the United States, and you can consider this the crossover version of Mercedes' brand new CLA sedan. Now when it comes to the crossovers, BMW does have a competitor for this, but interestingly enough, the competition is actually a little bit narrow because we basically have the X1, we have this GLA, we have the Range Rover Evoque, and we have the Audi Q3. In case you're wondering, this does not necessarily compete with the Lincoln MKC, the Lexus NX, or the Volvo XC60, because those are one step larger than this. They actually compete with the Mercedes-Benz GLK, which has recently been renamed the Mercedes-Benz GLC. Now, Mercedes has been renaming all their crossover vehicles in the United States, so the former ML is now the GLE, and the GL will be the GLS. Personally, I think the GLA is the most attractive entry in this segment. It has a lot to do with this very bold front end. We have this huge Mercedes logo, which interestingly enough can be optionally illuminated at night. Our particular model does have the radar cruise control system inserted in it, but we do have standard forward collision warning in all GLA models. I think the Range Rover Evoque is very attractive, but the BMW and the Audi are both a little bit restrained. Some might say too restrained, perhaps a little bit boring. Now, one thing to note is that we do not get xenon or HID headlamps standard in the GLA. We do have halogen headlamps in the base model, and that is something we see standard in the Q3. Up front, we have these very discreet fog lamps, and we also have well-integrated parking sensors. In terms of side profiles, you can see that this is somewhat between Audi's Q3, which is a very upright, more traditional SUV side profile shape, and something like a BMW X1 that really looks an awful lot more like a jacked-up hatchback. In terms of overall length, this slots right in the middle of this small segment, and it's about a foot shorter than the next size category up, which would be, again, the Lexus NX, X3, Audi Q5, and of course the Mercedes-Benz GLC. The back end is also an awful lot more expressive than the X1 or the Q3. We have the optional LED tail lamps on our particular model. They do wrap from the body right on here to the trunk lid. You'll notice we have a relatively small rear glass, and that does reduce a little bit of rearward visibility. We don't have a standard backup cam. We do, however, have a decent amount of trim going on down here to give it a little bit of extra flair, and we have standard integrated dual exhaust tips. Although keyless entry is not standard, a power tailgate is. Under the hood, we have two different 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engines. The GLA 250 gets one that produces 208 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. There's actually a different 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine that is hand-assembled in the AMG factory that gives us 355 horsepower and 332 pound-feet of torque for the 2015 model year. You'll note that is a decent amount more power than BMW's 3-liter inline-6 turbocharged engine. Now for 2016, that gets even more power, up to 375 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque. Both engines are mated to a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic transaxle. The GLA 250 sends power to the front wheels only by default with an optional all-wheel drive system, and the GLA 45 has a standard all-wheel drive system. Fuel economy comes in at 25 miles per gallon city, 35 highway, 29 combined for the front-wheel drive model, and the all-wheel drive model still is class-leading for all-wheel drive entries at 27 miles per gallon combined. The big takeaway for me, however, is that GLA 45 AMG only extracts 2 miles per gallon in your average. Not only did the 2016 GLA 45 AMG get a little bit more power for 2016, it also gained some additional refinements in its transmission programming and other systems in the vehicle, and those actually have quite a significant improvement in the 0 to 60 time, from 4.8 seconds 0 to 60 down to 4.3. Now 4.3 seconds 0 to 60 is incredibly fast, even in Mercedes' own performance portfolio. When it comes to front seat comfort, I'm going to give this 9 out of 10 points. The seat is quite comfortable, and it gets an improvement for 2016 with that extending thigh cushion. We have a multi-way adjustable driver's seat that is memory linked, and the headrest is even powered right over there. We also have a 4-way adjustable lumbar support, which I really appreciate. We also have a tilt telescopic steering column with a moderate range of motion. One thing you will notice in vehicles in this category is that we have relatively small door openings. So sitting with this front seat adjusted for me at 6 feet tall, you can see that the side of my head really is behind this B-pillar, and that does give me a rather large blind spot. That's very similar to every other vehicle in this segment. However, I do think that the GLA's B-pillar is a little bit chunkier than the Audi's. One of the big reasons to get this over the Mercedes CLA would be the rear seat accommodations. I have an awful lot more legroom than I do in the sedan. A lot of that has to do with the more upright profile we get in this crossover. The upright seating position really allows the seats to be arranged in a slightly different manner, and it also gives me more headroom. Now if I sit upright, the side of my head is brushing right here against the side of the ceiling. Over here on the right side of the vehicle, I have this front seat moved as far forward as is comfortable and safe for me at 6 feet tall, and you can see that I do have a great deal of legroom left there. That's because the dashboard in this particular vehicle, like other compact crossovers in this luxury segment, is shaped to allow that front seat to move further forward, actually giving you a quite practical rear seat. Again, that's especially compared to the CLA. That means that it is a tight squeeze, but it is possible to put rearward facing child seats back here, and that wasn't something I could really do in the CLA. Over here we have a softly padded center armrest with 2 cup holders well integrated into the side there. Rear seat passengers get a center armrest that is softly padded with 2 cup holders integrated right there. We also have a ski pass through to the back. Now, an odd thing, however, is that this center headrest right here, its prongs actually descend right there into the middle of that ski pass through. From a design perspective, in order to make the proportions of the CLA sedan work properly, they actually gave it quite a large trunk, and that means that we don't really get that much more cargo room in the GLA than we do in the CLA. That said, there is still ample room back here for 24 and 26-inch roller bags, and you can see that we could put this 26-inch roller bag on its side right like that under the tonneau cover. As you'd expect from a compact crossover, we do have rear seats that fold flat with the cargo area, but under this cargo load floor we find something unexpected, and that's some additional cargo storage space. Now, we don't have a spare tire in this vehicle at all. We do have a cargo divider right down here. This is where you'll find the tow hook, and you can store some additional small items down there. The well-designed cargo area in this Mercedes helps us get 8 out of 10 points when it comes to my exclusive trunk comfort index. Now, I do wish this had a spare tire because that is something I'd like, but I do appreciate both the power tailgate and the helper handle we have there. Let's start off our interior tour with this optional panoramic moonroof. You can see it is 2 separate panels right there, with 1 panel above the rear seats and 1 panel above the fronts. Now, the cover is not completely opaque, so it does let quite a lot of light in. Personally, that gives me a headache. Up front, we have 4-way adjustable headrests. They are adjustable forward and aft manually and electrically up and down. We also have height adjustable shoulder belts for both the driver and the front passenger. Unlike Audi's Q3, leather is not standard in the GLA, so these are MB-Tex or imitation leather seats. Unlike other Mercedes products where the front door panels are primarily soft touch plastics, we do have some hard touch plastics in this ivory section right down here. Now, this ivory insert is a soft touch plastic, and all the black portions of this door panel are soft as well. One thing you'll notice in basically every vehicle in this category is that the doors are a bit smaller than the next size category up. That means with this front seat adjusted for me at 6 feet tall, you can see where this B pillar is in the car, and that's where my elbow would be hitting. You'll notice the armrest is quite a bit in front of that right over here. In terms of overall style, the GLA borrows very heavily from the CLA, which is Mercedes' small sedan. So we do have this large soft touch upper section of the dashboard. It can optionally be done in stitched imitation leather, and our model has the optional wood trim right here, which is definitely an option that I would get. It really dresses the cabin up quite a bit. We have these very interesting circular air vents. I really like them because you can easily point them in every direction, and you can turn them off by rotating them sideways in that fashion. Over on the passenger side, we have a fairly small glove compartment right here. I was not able to fit a tablet computer inside. In the center of the dashboard, we have a center channel speaker, and then this little area right here is actually the analog readout for the front parking sensors. It'll show you little LED bars as you approach an object. That gives you both a visual and an auditory reference. Now, one of the big things that's changing for 2016 is that instead of this relatively small infotainment screen, this is just over 5 inches, we are getting a 7-inch infotainment screen, which is considerably better looking than this. We also will have a standard iPod interface in that model, and that's not something we have in the model we're taking a look at here. Now, again, the 2015 model starts out with this relatively small screen. We basically just have basic audio commands, phone interface, and certain system options. Inside system, this is also where you will find things like your off-road display and your consumption for fuel economy. Although the larger screen will be standard for 2016, navigation will remain optional. Moving down from that, you can see we have those 3 large air vents right there, and you'll notice that we do not have keyless go in the 2015 model. That will be a change for 2016 as well, where we will get keyless go standard. Below that, you'll see the controls for this Mercedes-Benz infotainment system right here. We have certain direct access buttons for radio navigation if we had that option in the vehicle. Disc, this also controls your media functions like Bluetooth and your USB and iPod interface if you have it. Telephone, mute, system options, dedicated phone hang-up and pick-up buttons. We also have dedicated track forward and backward buttons because we don't get those on the steering wheel. This is a volume knob with an on-off button, and then we get a keypad right over here for our telephone and a few other uses in the system. We also have a few other options down here. We have an off-road enable and disable option. This controls the all-wheel drive system and basically tells the car you're going to be doing some more challenging things with your all-wheel drive system. This button switches between economy, sport, and manual modes. That allows you to use paddle shifters on the back of the steering wheel in a true manual mode. You can engage them, of course, in economy or in sport, but it will revert back to drive. We have our hazard light button, our eco enable disable button, park sense disable button, and a hill descent control button. Another big change for 2016 is what you see right down here. The 2015 model includes a partial automatic climate control system that is single zone. So right over here we actually control the temperature with this particular knob over here, but then we have to manually control the fan speed and which air vents the air is coming out of. Now the system will control the damper settings automatically to maintain you at the selected temperature. Behind that is where you'll find the 12-volt power outlet and an ashtray or storage cubby right there. And then moving behind that, we have the first of our cup holders. This is the largest right here. This was easily able to accommodate large takeout drinks, and this section is also removable so that way you can put other large items in there right behind that cover. Moving on back from that, we have the control knob for our command infotainment system. This is one of the more basic control knobs that Mercedes has. Clear, back button. This does toggle up, down, side to side. It rotates around and clicks to enter. Next to that knob, we find two relatively small cup holders right here. These were not able to accommodate large takeout sodas. Behind that, we have a softly padded center armrest. It does not ratchet into position like other models, but it does slide forward and backward. Now, if we open that one up, you'll see that we have a relatively small storage compartment that's pretty average in this segment. It's just about the same size as you find in the Audi or in the Range Rover. Over on the driver's side, we have this 4-needle instrument cluster with a speedometer right over here on the right-hand side. Now, if we did have the radar cruise control activated in this system, it would light up a series of LEDs right along that ring right there, showing you what your set speed was. You'll also have a fuel gauge over there, a tachometer on the right, and the engine temperature gauge. In the center, we have a color LCD giving us trip computer information as well as transmission position indication and our temperature gauge right there. The display is controlled via this joystick button arrangement on the left side of the steering wheel. We have up, down, side to side, OK, and a back button. Right now we're on the audio options, and we can use this to go track forward and backward. That's how you would do that from the steering wheel. Otherwise, there are no dedicated track buttons. We can move side to side and get our telephone interface. Right now we don't have a phone connected with the system. We can also see our driver assistance systems and get an assistance graphic to tell you what they're up to. We can also see our service messages and our tire pressure in the vehicle if you so desire right there. You can see the tire pressure is fairly high in this particular vehicle. We also have vehicle settings where we can adjust our instrument cluster, vehicle lighting, etc. Like most luxury manufacturers, Mercedes loves putting stocks on the steering column. So on the right-hand side here, we have our transmission selection. So down for drive, up for reverse, 1 notch up or 1 notch down for neutral, depending on what gear you're in. We press the button at the end for park. On the right-hand side is where you'll find the turn signal stock that also has your windshield wiper controls. And then down here we have the stock for our cruise control. This knob right here controls the distance between you and the car in front if you do get the radar cruise control option, acceleration, deceleration, resume, and cancel. Zooming out to the steering wheel, you can see it is this very attractive 3-spoke steering wheel with very aggressive sport grips on the top right there. That is something that I missed in the Audi Q3. We also have shift paddles on the back of the steering wheel, up on the right and down on the left. We have dedicated phone hang-up, pickup, mute buttons, volume up, down button, and a voice command button that does nothing in our particular model. We also have this perforated grip section on the steering wheel right over there, and you can see that it is a round 3-spoke design. One thing missing on the Audi Q3 were memory positions for the driver's seat, and you can see we have a 3-position memory right over here, and interestingly enough, we also have a 3-position memory for the front passenger seat. Another interesting twist right here is that we do have those electric power headrests. Again, that's how you control them right there on the door. Now, the 4-way adjustable lumbar support is not right here on the door. It is actually on the seat itself. Acceleration in the GLA 250 is excellent. It's one of the best in this particular segment, especially when you're comparing base engines, and this is the base engine in the GLA. We ran from 0 to 60 in 6.6 seconds, which is a decent amount faster than, for instance, the Q3. Now, that is only a hair faster than the BMW X1 with the 2-liter turbocharged engine and their 8-speed automatic transmission, but that's going to be a little bit different for 2016 because the X1 in 2016 will be a front-wheel drive vehicle. We aren't sure how that will perform. And of course, we do have the GLA 45 AMG, which will do 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds for 2015 and 4.3 seconds for 2016. Now to put that in perspective, 4.3 seconds 0 to 60 is seriously fast. The last BMW M235i I tested wasn't able to go from 0 to 60 that fast in the two-wheel drive model. When it comes to braking, I'm going to have to split the score just a little bit because fade resistance is excellent in this model and gets even better if you get the performance package. However, braking distances are not as short as some of the other performance entries in the segment because of the tire size. We only have 235 with tires in this vehicle, and you will find wider tires in certain other entries. That said, handling is absolutely excellent in the GLA, and it's all down to the feel, because even though we don't have the same absolute grip numbers we do in, for instance, the Q3 that we recently tested, or in the upper level trims of the BMW X1, the feel of this vehicle is incredibly good. The steering is also pretty quick in the GLA, and it takes a little bit of getting used to. That means that when you turn the steering wheel a little bit, the front wheels turn an awful lot in relation and compared to other vehicles out on the market. Makes it a lot easier to drive this car in a sporty fashion. Now the downside again, of course, is when you start really pushing this in the corners, you can feel that we don't have the same kind of grip that we get in the Q3 or certain versions of the X1. I haven't been talking too much about the Range Rover Evoque, but the Evoque tends to be more of a luxurious option in the segment. It's not as fast as this. It also doesn't handle quite as well and doesn't have the same kind of feel out on the road. The one area where the GLA lets us down just a little bit is the ride. The ride can be a little bit harsh, a little bit crashy under certain conditions, especially on broken pavement. It can also get upset on broken pavement in corners. And that's just down to the overall suspension stiffness that we get in this vehicle. The suspension is just tuned an awful lot stiffer than most of the entries in this segment, and it really shows. Now, even though the suspension is relatively stiff, this seat actually helps soak up some of the bumps, and so as far as comfort goes, it's not really a problem. It's just that overall suspension feel. It can feel a little bit unsettled. The cabin is a little bit quieter here than in the CLA 250 because it seems like we're getting a little bit more sound deadening and we can hear less of the engine in this particular model. However, this is still louder than the X1, the Evoque, or the Audi Q3, so I'm going to have to give this a B- when it comes to overall cabin noise. The actual score came in at 72.5 decibels, which was the loudest in this segment. Fuel economy is absolutely excellent in this vehicle. It's easily the best in this category, not just in the EPA scores, but also in real-world driving. I've been averaging 25 miles per gallon, and I've been driving this car like I stole it. I've been going up and over a 2,200-foot mountain pass every day, on my way to work, stop and go traffic, that sort of thing, and I'm still getting very good fuel economy. That's 5 miles per gallon better than I was getting in the Audi Q3. Treating this gently on a one-way trip to work, going over and over that same mountain pass, stop and go traffic, etc., I was able to average 31 miles per gallon, which is better than the EPA says you're going to get. The high fuel economy is due as much to the engine as to the 7-speed dual-clutch transmission. This transmission is lightning fast in its shifts. The ratios are also very, very well designed. That's part of why we get such great acceleration in this vehicle. But also 7th gear is very high, and this engine, thanks to its great low-end torque, can actually handle that high gear ratio. The downside to this particular transmission, however, is the shift quality. It's just not as smooth as any of the other automatics in this segment. Of course, if we're driving this car hard and the shifts are just coming hard and fast like a Gatling gun in this transmission, then you're not going to notice it. When you're really going to notice the drivability issues with this transmission, or with any dual-clutch transmission, are low-speed travel. So if you're in that stop-and-go traffic, it can feel a little bit herky-jerky when you're stopping and when you're going, and sometimes downshifts can feel a little bit less elegant. However, Mercedes-Benz has gone back to the drawing board with the software, and this is actually much more refined than the CLA 250 that I recently reviewed. You can check out that review on my channel as well. Hopefully 2016 will bring further tweaks and further improvements to this transmission, but as it is, this is definitely one notch below the dual-clutch transmissions that we find in Volkswagen and Audi products. However, it is still a very good dual-clutch in general. Pricing for 2015 starts at $31,300, and 2016 pricing has yet to be announced. However, we do get some additional standard features for that 2016 model year, so I do expect the pricing to increase, likely around $1,000 or so. If you want the GLA 45 AMG, that will start at $48,300, and I do expect that price tag to also increase for the 2016 model year. Before we go over the changes for 2016, let's go over the 2015 model that you'll find right now on the dealer lots. If you want leather, that will add $1,700. If you want climate control, that would be the 2-zone automatic climate control system, also bundled with heated seats and the XM satellite radio option along with the media interface, that will be $2,300. All-wheel drive adds $2,000. The Sport package with improved braking adds $2,200. The radar cruise control package we have on this model is $2,500. That also adds blind spot information as well as lane keep assistance. If you want navigation, that is quite an expensive option, and it bundles the backup camera at $2,400. Although pricing has yet to be announced for 2016 and it will be a little bit more expensive than 2015, the value proposition will actually go up because we do get some standard feature equipment that really improves things in the base GLA model. We get standard dual zone climate control, the keyless start system, the 7-inch LCD that for 2015 was only bundled with one of those expensive packages. We also get pre-wiring for the aftermarket Garmin Navigation system. There are two different nav systems available in this vehicle. One is an aftermarket added Garmin Navigation system, and it integrates with that LCD. And the other one is the factory navigation system, which is fairly expensive. We also get a standard iPod and media interface and the extending thigh cushion for the driver's seat. If you're really after the utmost in feature content, you will notice that leather and the xenon headlamps are still optional for the 2016 model year. Our model as tested rang in at $41,200, and key takeaways here are that this model lacks leather, it lacks navigation, the iPod interface, the 2-zone climate control, and keyless start. Of course, some of those complaints again are mitigated in the 2016 model year, and I would probably wait if it was up to me. Now, the 2016 model year vehicles will be landing at dealers in October, I'm told, so only about 2 months after this video is being shot. A well-equipped model with all the options that I've been talking about so far, but not quite fully loaded, will set you back $48,000. That is one of the more expensive options in this segment. The first competitor is probably the easiest one to get out of the way, and that would be the Mini Countryman. Although the GLA is relatively small on the inside for this category, the Countryman is smaller. It's smaller on the outside, it's also smaller on the inside. The Countryman is also less expensive. It's right around $10,000 less or so. Of course, we get less power in the Countryman, less room, and the interior is not as nice. One of the key differences here really is that the Mini Countryman is not a luxury vehicle. It's more of a premium vehicle, and that is quite different because all of the vehicles in this immediate segment, you are paying a premium over your average entry-level crossover vehicle like a Hyundai Tucson or a Ford Escape. You're paying that premium for the brand. That is an important distinction because versus vehicles like the Mini Countryman or like alternatives along the lines of a Volkswagen Tiguan or Ford Escape or a Hyundai Tucson, you are paying for the additional refinement as well as the brand in this category of SUV. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have the Range Rover Evoque, and the Range Rover Evoque can be around $8,000 more expensive than this vehicle, depending on how you configure it. Now, the more options you add to the GLA, the closer it really gets to that Evoque in terms of overall price. As I've said before, the big difference between the Evoque and the other entries in this segment is the amount of customization you can do in the Evoque. You have an awful lot more control over the interior color palette, the hides you get, etc. The Evoque does feel a little bit more premium on the cabin inside. Of course, a lot of people also associate the Range Rover brand with a slightly higher status than Mercedes-Benz SUVs. The Evoque's new 9-speed automatic transmission helps it be peppier than it was in the past. However, it is still a hair slower than the model we tested right here. Of course, there is also the GLA-45 AMG, which has no Range Rover Evoque comparison. Both the Evoque and the GLA-250 are tuned a little bit on the stiff side in terms of suspension tuning. You will find the Q3 and the X1 to be a hair softer. Although I have complained about the Mercedes-Benz 7-speed dual-clutch transmission, there are a few valid complaints about the ZF 9-speed that we find in the Range Rover as well. Although I would say the Lincoln MKC, the Lexus NX, and the Volvo XC60 are not true competitors to the GLA, I would say that they are a little bit better value. We do get more room on the inside. We also find a few more standard features that we don't get in this particular model for right about the same price. Now, they aren't going to start quite as low as this, but once you start adding options, they're going to be relatively close. The MKC is the closest in terms of exterior size to this, and the Lexus NX and XC60 are a decent amount larger. Although the MKC, XC60, and NX do offer more power than we get in the GLA is likely going to be faster. It's certainly faster than the most recent Lincoln, Volvo, or Lexuses that we tested. We then have the Audi Q3, which I think is my favorite entry in this particular segment by a very small hair. That's largely because it's much more practical on the inside. We get more rear seat room, we get a little bit more front seat room. I was able to more comfortably fit child seats in the back of that vehicle, and I think its cargo area was a little bit more practical as well. Now on the downside, the Q3 is a lot slower than the model we're taking a look at here, and there's no corollary to the GLA-45 AMG at this point. Now, Audi has announced that there will be an RS Q3 available in Europe, but it's not coming to the US at this time. Although the GLA is faster than the Q3 and it's also a little bit lighter, the Q3 outhandles the GLA hands down. The suspension is also a little bit easier to live with. Even though the Q3 outhandles this, its suspension is actually a little bit softer, a little bit less punishing. Most versions of the Q3 you'll find on dealer lots have incredibly wide tires. They're 255 width tires. Now that probably accounts for the poor fuel economy we had in that Q3. It was decently lower than the GLA that we're testing right here, but handling was actually almost as good as the GLA 45 in terms of feel, and in terms of absolute grip, I actually think it's a little bit better than the GLA 45. Now the GLA 45 does not get wider tires. They're still 235 width tires, which is 2 steps narrower than what we find in the Q3 at those upper end trims. However, they are grippier summer tires. Now, of course, you can add grippier summer tires to your Audi Q3 and it will then handle better than any version of the GLA. Ultimately, the decision then comes down to whether you want the faster acceleration and the more attractive styling, or whether you want the more practical interior and the better handling. That's sort of the difference between the two in my book. Now, because of my personal priorities, I would take the more practical vehicle that handled better over the GLA. However, I would still turn my head every time I saw one in my rearview mirror. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes, and this has been the 2015 GLA 250. Go ahead and check out those related videos at the bottom of your screen, including that Audi Q3 review down there, and I'll see you next week.